October 29th, 2025, 7:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, and something extraordinary was unfolding just beyond the sun's blinding glare. Something that no one on Earth could see directly. I was sitting in my flat in Whitby, a quiet coastal town in northern England, sipping my morning tea, when the alert popped up on my tablet. An interstellar visitor, a comet named 3 Atlas, had just reached perihelion, its closest approach to the sun, a mere 203 million kilometers away. Now, I've always been fascinated by space, but this wasn't just any comet. This cosmic wanderer was unlike anything we'd ever seen before. For 10 billion years, it had drifted through the void, untouched by any star's warmth until now. And then, as it slid behind the sun from our viewpoint, it vanished completely for 8 days. Our most powerful ground-based telescopes couldn't catch a glimpse. Even the top-notch observatories in the Canary Islands and the Scottish Highlands were blind, and the high-tech satellites orbiting Earth offered no clues. It was as if 3 Atlas was playing hide and seek with us, and it was winning. But the real kicker? In the hours before disappearing behind the sun, the comet's glow intensified dramatically, brighter than any comet we'd ever tracked. And get this, it was glowing bluer than the sun itself. Now that's weird, because comets, especially ancient ones, should be cold, dull, and dusty, not shining with a blue heat hotter than our star's surface. I mean, if the sun is the cosmic campfire, 3 Atlas was like someone roasting marshmallows with a flamethrower. The next day, October 30th, the Punch satellite constellation finally caught sight of it re-emerging from behind the sun's blinding light. According to NASA's automatic tracking, it followed the predicted path with no sudden moves, no course corrections, no fancy gravitational slingshots aiming Earth's way. At least, that's what the public data said. But here's the thing. There were gaps. Big ones. NASA supposedly had high-res images from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter when 3 Atlas zipped just 30 million kilometers from Mars on October 2nd. Harvard's top astrophysicist, Dr. Oliver Lane, requested those images, no dice. Not a peep. Meanwhile, China's Purple Mountain Observatory, which had been tracking the comet intensely for months, stopped releasing data right after the Mars flyby, citing lunar mission scheduling conflicts. Convenient. Huh? Like when someone suddenly remembers they have an urgent dentist appointment whenever the conversation gets awkward. This isn't just conspiracy fodder. It's a puzzle missing key pieces. Even without those secret snapshots, the facts we have simply don't add up. Let me take you through it from the start. 3 Atlas isn't just a visitor from another star system. Its age is staggering, around 10 billion years old. Our entire solar system is less than half that. When this thing formed, the universe was a much younger, wilder place. Galaxies were crashing together, massive stars were exploding, and somewhere in that chaos, this comet took shape. The thing is, natural comets are fragile, like cosmic snowballs held together by spit and hope. Radiation, gravitational tugs, time's relentless should have shredded this ancient traveler to bits long ago. Yet here it was, venting gas like a fresh-faced comet, intact and active after 10 billion years. Talk about defying the odds. But wait, it gets even stranger. First, its path aligned almost perfectly with the ecliptic plane, the flat disk where all the planets orbit. That's rare for an interstellar object, with only a 0.2% chance of happening by accident. Then, its timing was suspiciously precise, swinging close to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, and conveniently slipping out of view behind the sun during perihelion. The odds of all this lining up naturally? 5 in 100,000. In other words, if this were a lottery ticket, it'd be the cosmic equivalent of winning the jackpot while getting struck by lightning and finding a 10-pound note in your old coat pocket. And then there was the sunward jet. From July through August, telescopes like the Hubble caught 3 Atlas venting material straight toward the sun. That's the opposite of how comets behave. Their tails always point away from the sun, pushed by solar radiation like a cosmic wind. But this comet? It was spitting gas at our star like a rebellious teenager flicking spitballs at the teacher. Scientists call this an anti-tail, and it lasted for weeks, confirmed by multiple observatories. Then, out of nowhere, in October, it vanished. The comet's plume shifted direction, behaving normally again. Now, the composition was another head-scratcher. Spectral analysis revealed huge amounts of nickel venting constantly, 4 grams every second. That might not sound like much, but it adds up fast. Even weirder, there was almost no iron, which normally dominates alongside nickel in cosmic objects. This nickel-to-iron ratio matches man-made alloys, not natural formations. Imagine finding a rusted-out old car in the middle of a forest and realizing it's made from spaceship parts. That's the kind of surprise we're talking about. And the water content? Typical comets are mostly ice, up to 80% water. 3 Atlas? Barely 4%. It was venting water vapor, sure, but the actual amount was absurdly low. What kind of comet barely contains water? Maybe one that's been on a cosmic diet for 10 billion years. Oh, and when light bounced off its surface, it showed an extreme negative polarization signature unlike anything seen before. Basically, it was reflecting light in ways that made astronomers scratch their heads so hard they almost needed neck braces. Here's the kicker. The comet came from almost the same patch of sky where the infamous 1977 WOW! Radio signal originated, a mysterious, strong, narrowband transmission that lasted just over a minute and never repeated. The chance of that alignment is just 0.6%. Put it all together, the trajectory, timing, sunward jet, nickel content, water scarcity, light polarization, and the WOW! Signal connection, and the odds of this being a natural coincidence are 1 in 10 quadrillion. To put that in perspective, you'd have to win the UK National Lottery 34 million times in a row to match those odds. And trust me, that's a nightmare I wouldn't wish on anyone. So what does it mean? Is 3 Atlas just a freaky, ancient comet smashing every rule in the book? Or could it be something else? Something designed, maybe even artificial? I'm not saying it's an alien spaceship. I'm saying the data doesn't fit our usual comet models. And that blue glow? It's like the universe is winking at us and daring us to figure out what's really going on. But here's the maddening part. Right in the middle of all this mystery, the comet vanished behind the sun's glare. We have before and after, but what happened in those critical 8 days? That's the question nobody's answering. And as I stared out over the gray North Sea from my kitchen window, a chill ran down my spine. Because whatever secrets 3 Atlas hides, it's not telling us just yet. And I have a feeling that when the truth finally comes out, it's going to change everything we thought we knew about the universe. But that's a story for later. For now, all we can do is watch, wait, and wonder. The following morning, I found myself at the Whitby Observatory, a modest setup perched on a cliff overlooking the North Sea. I'd volunteered there during university, and though it wasn't exactly the Royal Greenwich, it had a powerful telescope and a dedicated team. Today, the place buzzed with quiet excitement. Everyone was talking about 3 Atlas. I settled into the control room, the smell of cold metal and warm electronics, mixing with the salty sea air, wafting through the open window. On the screen, the comet appeared as a faint, glowing blur near Venus, rising just before dawn. Not bright enough to dazzle the naked eye, but through the eyepiece, it was unmistakable. A ghostly blue smudge drifting slowly across the stars. As I adjusted the focus, I glanced over at Dr. Emily Carter, the lead astronomer. She was in her mid-30s, with sharp green eyes framed by her tousled auburn hair. Today, she wore a sleek black dress that hugged her figure just enough to catch the light, paired with ankle boots that clicked confidently on the tiled floor. Around her neck hung a delicate silver chain with a tiny star pendant. Something about it made her look both approachable and mysteriously radiant. There was a subtle elegance in her movements, the kind that made you wonder what stories she carried behind those eyes. "Morning, James," she said without looking up. "Ready for another day chasing ghosts from the stars?" "Always," I replied, smirking. "Though sometimes I think these comets have better social lives than I do." She laughed softly, the sound warm and genuine. "Well, at least 3 Atlas is giving us more than just a passing glance." We both returned our attention to the monitors. Over the past weeks, the data had been pouring in from observatories worldwide, but it was still frustratingly incomplete. Emily pulled up the latest spectral analysis from the European Southern Observatory. "There it is," she said, pointing to a graph. "Nickel lines stronger than ever." And the water vapor signature, still barely there. I frowned. How does something that old keep venting metal vapor like that? Nickel boils at nearly 3,000 degrees Celsius. The surface temperature's nowhere near that. She shrugged, biting her lip. That's the million-pound question. Some suggest it's got an internal heat source. Maybe radioactive decay? Or something more exotic. I raised an eyebrow. Exotic? Like what? Alien engines? Don't be ridiculous, she said with mock sternness, but the flicker in her eyes betrayed a hint of curiosity. But it's not impossible that there's something unusual going on beneath the surface. The comet's sunward jet, the strange composition, the insane brightness spike before perihelion. All of it defied the standard comet playbook. It was as if 3 Atlas was rewriting the rules behind our backs. Emily leaned closer, lowering her voice. You know what worries me most? That 8-day blackout behind the sun. That's when the weirdest stuff probably happened. But no one's letting us see. I nodded. NASA and China both clammed up after the Mars flyby. No images, no data, just silence. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. Makes you wonder what they're hiding. Maybe it's nothing, or maybe it's exactly what no one wants us to know. The room fell quiet, save for the hum of computers and the distant cry of seagulls outside. I stole a glance at Emily, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on us both. Do you think, I ventured cautiously, that 3 Atlas could be watching us? Like some cosmic spy? She smiled, a slow, enigmatic curl of her lips. If it is, it's doing a hell of a job playing dumb. Just then, an alert pinged on the main console. Emily's eyes widened. Hold on. This is from the JUICE spacecraft out near Jupiter. They picked up something. I leaned over as she pulled up the data. A faint, irregular flare in the comet's brightness, subtle but unmistakable. Looks like 3 Atlas is still active, Emily said, voice tight with excitement. Even this far out. It's not just drifting. It's pulsing. I rubbed my chin. Like a heartbeat. She nodded. Exactly. And that means whatever's powering it isn't done yet. The clock ticked on, shadows lengthening as dawn broke fully across Whitby. Outside, the waves crashed rhythmically against the cliffs, timeless and indifferent. But inside that little observatory, a silent tension bloomed between us. A shared sense that we were on the edge of something big, something that might shake the foundations of everything we thought we knew. As I packed up my gear later, Emily caught my arm gently. James, whatever happens, keep watching. Because this comet, it's not finished telling its story. And as I looked back toward the fading blue glow of 3 Atlas, just beyond the horizon, I had to admit, the mystery was only deepening. But deep mysteries have a way of demanding answers, even if those answers come at a price. That evening, I found myself wandering the narrow cobbled streets of Whitby, the salty breeze tugging at my jacket as twilight settled in. The town's old gas lamps flickered on, casting golden pools of light over the damp stones. I needed fresh air, something to clear my head after the weight of the day's discoveries. Emily's words echoed in my mind. This comet? It's not finished telling its story. Funny how a simple sentence could feel like a cryptic warning. As I passed the old lighthouse, its whitewashed walls glowing faintly, I bumped into an unexpected figure. Detective Inspector Mark Sullivan. A broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with a neatly trimmed beard and sharp blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He was here on an unrelated matter, investigating a series of strange radio interference reports from amateur astronomers in the area. He'd heard whispers of 3 Atlas and was curious. James, isn't it? He said, offering a firm handshake. I hear you're the local expert on this interstellar visitor. Expert might be a stretch, I replied with a grin. But I do know my way around a telescope. He chuckled, the sound gravelly but friendly. Well, I'm here because some of our local enthusiasts have been picking up odd signals. Nothing official, just static and bursts that don't match anything natural. I frowned. That's interesting. 3 Atlas has been silent so far, at least as far as radio transmissions go. But who knows what's lurking in that comet's tail? Sullivan's gaze sharpened. You think there's more to this visitor than just dust and ice? I shrugged. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, I'd have said it's just another space rock. Now, I'm not so sure. He looked up at the sky, where the first stars began to twinkle. Funny how the universe keeps throwing curveballs at us. Isn't it? Like it's got a sense of humor. Or maybe it's just testing our sanity, I said, trying to lighten the mood. Sullivan smiled, but there was a seriousness beneath it. Keep your eyes open, James. Sometimes the smallest clues come from the most unexpected places. We parted ways, and I continued down toward the harbor, where fishing boats bobbed gently in the water. The sea reflected the deepening blue of the sky, and somewhere beyond, 3 Atlas was drifting, a silent enigma. Later that night, back in my flat, I sat by the window, a steaming mug of coffee warming my hands. The comet's image was etched into my mind. A glowing, layered halo stretching nearly 300,000 kilometers, its eerie blue light shimmering like something alive. I pulled up the latest spectral data on my laptop. The nickel emissions alone were staggering, 4 grams per second, continuous for months. Doing the math, that meant over 40 metric tons of nickel vaporized into space since July. Nickel isn't like water or carbon dioxide. It requires intense heat to vaporize. The surface temperature of 3 Atlas, even at perihelion, couldn't explain that. So where was the energy coming from? A sudden thought struck me. If there was an internal heat source, could it be powered by something artificial? A probe, perhaps, designed to recharge by skimming close to stars, gathering energy, and continuing its endless journey through the galaxy. I shook my head, half smiling at the sci-fi cliché. Come on, James. Don't start watching too many late-night movies. But just then, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Congresswoman Anna Palmer calls for NASA to release Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter images of 3 Atlas flyby. I felt a chill. The political wheels were turning, and transparency was the word on everyone's lips. Maybe, finally, we'd get a glimpse of what happened during those 8 secretive days. I glanced back out the window. The stars were bright, cold, and distant. Somewhere out there, 3 Atlas was moving away from the sun at 210,000 kilometers per hour, heading back into the dark, carrying secrets from an era before Earth even existed. And I couldn't help but wonder, was it just a comet? Or something far more extraordinary, silently watching us from the depths of space? The next morning, the Whitby skies were overcast, a thick blanket of gray clouds muting the usual sparkle of dawn. Inside the observatory, the atmosphere was tense and electric, as if the very air was charged with anticipation. Emily was already there, pacing near the telescope controls, her silver star pendant catching the dim light as she moved. James, she said without looking up. NASA finally responded. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter images are scheduled for release next week. But get this, they're heavily redacted and encrypted. Apparently, it's sensitive. I raised an eyebrow. Sensitive or classified? You know how governments love to keep secrets when things get interesting. She nodded grimly. Exactly. Meanwhile, the International Asteroid Warning Network is coordinating a global observation campaign. Starting late November, observatories across the world will focus on 3 Atlas. They want to catch any tiny movement, any deviation from its predicted path. I couldn't help but grin. So, we're officially stalking a comet now? Emily smirked. More like watching a cosmic cat with 9 lives. As the day dragged on, we pored over data streaming in from telescopes in Chile, Hawaii, and beyond. The comet was moving steadily away from the sun, but the complexity of its glowing halo was still a mystery. The layered structure suggested something far more organized than a simple cloud of dust and gas. It was as if the comet was wrapped in carefully arranged sheets of material, glowing softly in shades of icy blue. Emily adjusted the monitor, zooming in on the spectral readings. Look at this, she said, pointing. The polarization signature is still off the charts. Nothing like any comet we've studied. I leaned closer, tracing the jagged lines on the graph. It's like the light is bouncing off a surface designed to scatter it in very specific ways. She smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. You're starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I chuckled. Well, if 3 Atlas were wearing a tuxedo and sipping a martini, I'd say it's the James Bond of comets. Emily laughed. Maybe it's got a license to thrill. The afternoon brought a surprise visit from Professor Richard Hayes, a renowned planetary scientist from Cambridge. Tall and distinguished, with silver-streaked hair and a neatly trimmed mustache, he carried an air of quiet authority. His sharp blue suit was complemented by a navy tie dotted with tiny stars, a subtle nod to his passion. I hear you're chasing the comet everyone's whispering about, he said, shaking my hand firmly. I wanted to see the data firsthand. Emily gestured toward the screens. We've been tracking its unusual composition, the nickel emissions, the anti-tail, the polarization. It's unlike anything natural. Professor Hayes nodded slowly. I've reviewed the preliminary reports. Fascinating stuff. But I'm cautious. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I nodded in agreement. Of course. But what if it's not just natural? What if it's something designed? He smiled wryly. Ah, the age-old question. Are we alone? Is the universe sending us a message? Or just a very old, very odd space rock? Emily cut in, voice low and steady. The trajectory aligns too perfectly with planetary flybys and the ecliptic plane to be random. The timing, the composition, it all points to something deliberate. Professor Hayes raised an eyebrow. Or the universe has a sick sense of humor. We all laughed, but beneath the levity was an unspoken truth. None of us had answers. Only questions that dug deeper with every observation. As dusk fell, Emily and I stepped outside, the cool evening breeze brushing past us. The sky was clearing, revealing a tapestry of stars. Somewhere out there, 3 Atlas was drifting, a ghost from the ancient cosmos, carrying secrets we were only beginning to unravel. I looked at Emily, feeling the weight of the unknown between us. Do you ever wonder if we're ready for what we might find? She smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the starlight. I don't know if anyone ever is, but curiosity has a way of pushing us forward, whether we like it or not. And with that, we turned back inside, ready to face whatever the universe chose to reveal next. The following evening, I found myself alone in the observatory's dimly lit control room, the glow of monitors casting long shadows on the walls. Outside, the North Sea whispered secrets against the cliffs, and a chill crept in through the cracked window. I wrapped my scarf tighter, feeling the weight of the day's revelations pressing down like the heavy autumn mist. Emily had left earlier, promising to review the latest data from the James Webb Space Telescope. She'd mentioned something about infrared heat signatures, potentially revealing hot spots on the comet's surface. I hoped her findings would shed light on the enigma, but deep down, I feared the answers might only raise more questions. As I stared at the screen, a new set of images flickered into view. Raw data from the JUICE spacecraft, currently trailing Jupiter, about 75 million kilometers from 3 Atlas. The pictures were grainy but unmistakable. A vast, glowing halo enveloping the comet's core, stretching nearly as far as the distance from Earth to the Moon. The layers within the halo shimmered in hues of icy blue and silver, swirling with a strange, almost deliberate pattern. I zoomed in, my heart pounding. The structure was unlike any cometary coma I'd seen before. It resembled a carefully woven tapestry, intricate and ordered, a cosmic fingerprint hinting at something more than chance. Suddenly, a soft chime interrupted my thoughts. An incoming message from Dr. Lane, the Harvard astrophysicist, flashed on the screen. James, it began. Have you seen the polarization data from the latest ground-based campaign? It's off the charts. The negative polarization effect is stronger than ever, suggesting surface materials unlike any known comet. I'm starting to think we're dealing with something engineered. I typed back quickly. Engineered? As in artificial. His reply was almost immediate. I hesitate to say it aloud, but yes, the cumulative anomalies, trajectory, composition, light scattering, point toward that uncomfortable possibility. Keep digging. I leaned back, rubbing my face. The idea of an artificial comet sounded like science fiction, Yet the evidence was mounting. Could 3 Atlas be a probe? A relic of some ancient civilization, silently voyaging through the galaxy for billions of years? Just then, the observatory's radio antenna crackled to life. A burst of static followed by faint, irregular pulses. My pulse quickened. I grabbed the headphones, listening intently. Nothing coherent, just random noise. But the timing felt suspicious, coinciding with the comet's passage through our line of sight. I recorded the data and sent it off to the SETI Institute for analysis, hoping their algorithms could tease out any hidden signals. As midnight approached, I stepped outside to clear my head. The cool night air filled my lungs, and the stars above seemed sharper, closer than ever. Somewhere out there, 3 Atlas was continuing its journey, oblivious to the humans scrutinizing its every move. I thought about the nickel emissions, 40 tons of metal vaporized into space, impossible without intense heat or some unknown process. The comet's survival through perihelion, its structural integrity after 10 billion years, the sudden shift in its gas jets. All pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit neatly. Suddenly, a shooting star streaked across the sky, a brief flash of light against the darkness. I smiled wryly. Maybe that's a message, I whispered. Or maybe just a cosmic coincidence. But as I stood there, a nagging thought gnawed at me. If 3 Atlas was artificial, why hadn't it altered its course to investigate Earth? It had passed Mars within 30 million kilometers, close enough to capture detailed images, yet it ignored our planet entirely. Was it simply not interested? Or was it waiting for what I didn't know? Returning inside, I stared at the screens once more. The comet's glow pulsed softly, a distant heartbeat in the vastness of space. And I realized, this was only the beginning. Whatever secrets 3 Atlas held, the universe wasn't ready to give them up without a fight. The next morning dawned cold and gray, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones and makes you glad for a thick jumper and a strong cup of tea. I arrived early at the Whitby Observatory, the familiar scent of metal and ozone greeting me like an old friend. Today was different, though. The anticipation hung heavy in the air. Emily was already there, standing by the large telescope, her auburn hair pulled back into a loose ponytail. She wore a fitted navy sweater and dark jeans, boots scuffed from a morning walk along the cliffs. Around her wrist jingled a delicate bracelet of intertwined silver and blue beads. Something about it made her seem both grounded and ethereal, like a star caught on Earth. "Morning, James," she said without looking up. "Brace yourself. The latest from Hubble just came in." I swallowed my nerves. "Show me." She tapped a few keys, and the screen flickered to life with a high-resolution image of 3 Atlas. The comet's nucleus was no longer just a blurry spot. It was a rugged, irregular shape about 5 kilometers across, wrapped in a swirling halo of mist and gas. But what caught my eye was a series of faint geometric patterns etched into the surface, straight lines, sharp angles, almost like the remnants of structures. I blinked. "Are those buildings?" Emily shrugged, her expression unreadable. "That's what it looks like. Or something artificial. Natural erosion doesn't carve straight edges like that." My mind raced. After months of speculation, here it was, visual evidence that could rewrite everything. "We have to be careful," Emily added. "This could be an optical illusion, artifacts from image processing. But if it's real..." She didn't finish the sentence. Neither of us needed to. Suddenly, another alert beeped. This time from the Very Large Array in New Mexico. Radio telescopes had picked up a faint, repetitive signal emanating from the comet's direction. The pattern was subtle, but unmistakably non-random. My heart pounded. "Signal." Emily nodded, eyes wide. "A beacon. Or a message." We spent the next hours analyzing the data, cross-referencing with global observatories. The signal's frequency was unusual, far outside natural cosmic sources. It pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat, with intervals that suggested deliberate encoding. "Could it be a distress call?" I whispered. "Or a greeting," Emily said softly. The implications were staggering. An ancient artifact, drifting through space, possibly sent by an intelligence that existed billions of years ago. A silent witness to cosmic history, now reaching out across the void. But then came the question that chilled me. Why now? Why reveal itself only as it passed behind our sun, cloaked in secrecy and shadows? Emily looked at me, her gaze fierce and determined. Because it wants us to find it. Outside, the wind howled against the cliffs, carrying with it the scent of salt and mystery. Somewhere in the vast darkness, 3 Atlas was pulsing with life, its secrets slowly unraveling. And I knew, deep down, that this was the moment everything changed. The universe had whispered its secret, and we were finally listening. That night, the stars above Whitby shimmered with an almost electric intensity, as if the cosmos itself was holding its breath. The observatory was alive with activity. Scientists, technicians, and amateur astronomers all glued to their screens, their faces illuminated by the pale glow of monitors streaming data from every corner of the globe. Emily and I sat side by side, eyes flicking between images, spectra, and signal analyses. Her delicate fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling up the latest readings from the James Webb Space Telescope's infrared instruments. The heat maps revealed something remarkable. Localized hotspots on 3 Atlas's surface that defied explanation. These weren't random thermal fluctuations caused by solar heating. They were concentrated emissions, clustered in tight, irregular patches. "Look at this," Emily whispered, zooming in on a particularly bright hotspot near what appeared to be one of those geometric features. "It's like a furnace. Something is generating heat internally." I swallowed hard. If this is a natural comet, it shouldn't have hotspots like that. It's like it's powered from within. She nodded, her eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Exactly. It's almost as if it's alive." The idea was ridiculous, yet impossible to dismiss. A comet with an internal engine, pulsing with energy, sending out coded signals across space. Everything about 3 Atlas screamed of design, intent. Suddenly, a new alert flashed. The radio telescopes had picked up a sudden spike in signal strength, a burst of complex modulation unlike anything previously recorded. The pattern was intricate, layered, almost musical. I leaned closer, tracing the waveform, trying to decipher the hidden message. "It's like a language," I murmured, "but not one we know." Emily's breath caught. Could it be a mathematical code? Prime numbers, sequences. We raced to run real-time analyses, feeding the data into decryption algorithms, searching for patterns. Minutes stretched into hours. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, and the sea roared faintly in the distance. Then, just as dawn began to pale the eastern sky, the code began to unravel. A sequence of prime numbers, followed by geometric sequences, and at its core, a repeating pattern that resembled a star map. Emily looked at me, voice trembling. "It's a map. Directions. Coordinates." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "To where?" Her green eyes held a mixture of wonder and fear. "We don't know yet, but it's definitely not here." The comet had sent us a message, a beacon pointing beyond our solar system, to a place we had never imagined. A cosmic invitation wrapped in light and shadow. As the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, I realized that 3 Atlas wasn't just a visitor. It was a guide. And we were standing at the edge of a journey that could redefine humanity's place in the universe. But amid the thrill, a dark question gnawed at me. If this message was meant to be found, who sent it? And why now, after billions of years drifting through the void? The answers were out there, somewhere between the stars. And the comet's secrets were only beginning to unfold. The days that followed felt like living inside a whirlwind. News of the decoded message from 3 Atlas spread like wildfire, igniting excitement and skepticism in equal measure. Headlines screamed about alien intelligence, cosmic invitations, and humanity's first contact, though none of us at Whitby felt quite ready for that. Emily and I were pulled into a flurry of interviews and briefings, but every moment away from the data felt like a distraction. Back in the observatory, the atmosphere was electric, yet tense. The comet continued its steady retreat from the sun, but its mysteries deepened. One afternoon, as rain pattered softly against the windows, Emily and I sat poring over the latest spectroscopic data from the European Southern Observatory. She was wearing a loose, emerald green blouse that caught the light in subtle ways, paired with a dark skirt and polished ankle boots. The delicate chain with her silver star pendant glinted as she leaned forward, her lips pressed in concentration. "Look at this," she said, pointing at a graph. "The nickel-to-iron ratio is still completely off. Nickel is high, iron almost non-existent. It's like the comets venting pure, industrial-grade metal." I shook my head, incredulous. That's impossible for a natural object. Even a planetary fragment should have iron and nickel in a balanced ratio. Emily's eyes flashed with determination. "Exactly. It points to manufacture, to alloys made for specific properties. Something or someone designed this." The room seemed to shrink as the weight of that thought settled between us. If 3 Atlas was artificial, who had built it? How had it survived 10 billion years, skimming stars, crossing galaxies, and now reaching us? What was its purpose? Later, as evening fell, I found myself wandering the cliffs overlooking the North Sea, the wind whipping my coat around me. The sky was a charcoal canvas sprinkled with stars, the Milky Way a shimmering ribbon overhead. Somewhere out there, 3 Atlas was tracing a path through the darkness, a silent emissary from a bygone era. My phone buzzed. A message from Emily. Look up. Now. I tilted my head, scanning the heavens. First, I saw nothing unusual. Then, a streak of light flashed. A meteor? No, too slow, deliberate. Another followed. Then another, tracing precise arcs across the sky. I called Emily. "Are you seeing this?" "Yes. Patterns. Signals in the meteor shower. Artificial. They're synchronized with the comet's trajectory." My pulse quickened. "Like a cosmic semaphore." She laughed softly. "Or a celestial Morse code." The realization hit me. 3 Atlas wasn't alone. It had companions, smaller probes or beacons, scattered like breadcrumbs across our solar system. Some might even be closer than we thought, hidden among the asteroids or orbiting Earth itself. A shiver ran down my spine. The universe was no longer a silent void. It was alive with watchers, messengers, and mysteries. As I stared up at the stars, a dark thought lingered. If these probes were watching us, what had they seen? Were we ready for the answers? Or were some secrets better left in the shadows? The night whispered its eternal question. Are we truly alone? And somewhere in the vastness, 3 Atlas and its silent fleet held the key. The following week was a blur of sleepless nights and relentless data analysis. The global scientific community had mobilized like never before, telescopes and observatories across continents trained on 3 Atlas and its mysterious companions. Reports flooded in small, dark objects darting in calculated patterns near the asteroid belt, faint radio pulses echoing from the shadows, subtle gravitational anomalies suggesting hidden masses. Emily and I found ourselves at the heart of it all, working side by side in the observatory's cramped control room. The air was thick with anticipation, and the faint hum of machines was a constant reminder that the universe was whispering secrets just beyond our reach. One evening, as rain lashed against the windows, Emily sat close, her dark hair falling in soft waves around her face. She wore a fitted charcoal sweater and faded jeans, the casual attire belying the intensity in her eyes. Her silver star pendant caught the flickering light, a beacon in the dim room. "We've detected something," she said quietly, pulling up a new set of images. "A cluster of microprobes orbiting just beyond Mars. They're tiny, too small for our telescopes to resolve individually, but their combined effect disrupts the local environment." I leaned in, studying the data. The probes emitted faint electromagnetic fields, their patterns eerily coordinated. It was as if they were communicating, a swarm of silent observers. "Do you think they've been here all along?" I asked. "Watching us?" Emily nodded slowly. "Probably. Maybe for centuries, maybe millennia. Waiting for the right moment." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. The idea of unseen eyes tracking humanity was both thrilling and terrifying. Suddenly, An alert flashed on the screen. An incoming transmission from one of the microprobes. The signal was weak, fragmented, but unmistakably artificial. Emily's fingers flew over the keyboard, isolating the message. It was a series of pulses, complex, layered, and unmistakably deliberate. Our decryption algorithm struggled, but fragments began to emerge, mathematical constants, star charts, and then something new. Coordinates pointing not outward, but inward to Earth. Her voice trembled. They know we're here, and they're reaching out. The room seemed to close in around us as the implications sank in. We were no longer just observers. We were participants in a cosmic dialogue. But then came the final, chilling question. What did they want? As the night deepened, I stared at the stars beyond the observatory's window, feeling both awe and unease. Somewhere out there, ancient watchers had awakened, and the universe had shifted forever. The message was clear. The game had changed, and humanity was now on the board. The air in the observatory was thick with tension as the final hours of the year approached. Outside, Whitby was cloaked in a deep winter hush, the sea's relentless roar softened by snow drifting over the cliffs. Inside, Emily and I sat side by side, eyes locked on the data streaming in from every corner of the solar system. The microprobe's transmission had evolved into a steady stream of information, star maps, mathematical sequences, and what appeared to be a countdown. A cosmic clock ticking down to an unknown event, synchronized with 3 Atlas's trajectory as it neared its closest approach to Earth. December 19th. The Day 3 Atlas would come within 269 million kilometers, the closest it would get in this pass. The world outside buzzed with anticipation and fear. Media outlets speculated wildly, governments issued cautious statements, and the scientific community braced for revelation or disaster. Emily's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the spectrograph, revealing new thermal anomalies on the comet's surface. "This isn't natural," she whispered. "It's a signal. A beacon." I swallowed hard. But a beacon for what? And for whom? Before she could answer, the observatory's radio crackled to life. A sudden burst of coherent transmission, unmistakably artificial and encoded with layers of complexity. The pattern shifted rapidly, forming a fractal-like sequence that defied immediate analysis. Suddenly, the screen flickered, revealing an image, a symbol etched into the comet's surface. A circle intersected by a triangle, glowing faintly with that impossible blue light. A message not in words, but in shapes.
À signature.
Emily's voice was barely audible. "They're saying, they're here. Or at least they want us to know they were." The room fell into stunned silence. Outside, the stars seemed to pulse with a deeper rhythm, as if the cosmos itself was holding its breath. Then came the unexpected, a subtle shift in the comet's trajectory, imperceptible at first, then growing clearer. 3 Atlas was adjusting its path, no longer a silent traveler but an active participant. The implications crashed over me like a tidal wave. This was no mere visitor. It was a messenger, a sentinel, or perhaps a scout. But to what end? As the countdown ticked away, I felt the weight of humanity's collective gaze upon that distant blue glow. Questions swirled. Were we ready for contact? Would the universe welcome us? Or was this the calm before an unfathomable storm? And then, as the comet's glow intensified one last time, the radio burst fractured into static. Silence. The observatory's monitors went dark. Outside, the night stretched endless and unknowable. And in the dark, I whispered to the stars, "We're listening," because the greatest mystery had only just begun.